Paperback Rocker, episode 56. Hey, this is Matt Severson, the Paperback Rocker, and I'm broadcasting from my 6x9-foot cinder block shack in the desert of northern Mexico, southern Texas. Welcome and thanks for checking out my show.
Welcome to the Paperback Rocker Show, where words and music collide.
Hey everybody, what's up? It's your old friend Matt, back again with my little podcast after an extended hiatus. This is that spot on the internet where I used to like to talk about all different kinds of things, mostly centered around music, but they were all supposed to, in a tangential way, benefit me as an author and expose my listeners to my writing. And I really never even focused on that very much. So I have a new format here for the extended future, which basically will be what just happened is a good example of. There will be no editing. I'm not going to fix little things like that like I used to. It's just too time consuming, and this is a hopefully a format that will make me able to do this for a long time without being burned out at any point. So the new format is I am going to read for about 15 minutes from my books, and I'm going just to read my books basically. I'm starting on page 1 of Blue Whiskey, and I'm going to read that, and then it'll be another book, and another, and so on. So if you'd like to follow along, you should purchase one of my books. You can do that by contacting me at paperbackrocker@live.com, or you can order through Amazon by searching for my name, Matt Severson, Syverson. And my books are available for Kindle or hardback or paperback. So, with all that being said, I think that's all I need to mention. Thanks for being back with me after this very extended hiatus. And you're going to hear me taking drinks, making mistakes, reading, coughing, all that kind of stuff. But this is the way it's going to be. Okay? I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to start my timer and read from Blue Whiskey by Matt Severson, Backstage Pass Publishing, Victoria, Texas. Dedicated to Big Al, the most generous person I know. Because of my hang-ups and many other things, I would only now and then specifically write about me. And now I wrote all about me. And that's why I like it. It's me and nobody else. John Lennon. Chapter 1. I was born on January 4th, 1945, in a little hospital in Oxford, Mississippi, and christened Stanton Wheelhouse III. My middle name was not the same as my father and grandfather's, but I was still considered the third in the Stanton Wheelhouse lineage. They had the middle name Earl, but mine is Cuthbert, a tribute to William Faulkner, the man my father hoped I would someday emulate. My father chose my name early in the pregnancy and assured my mother, Prudence, that I was going to be a boy. My father's will was that strong. When I emerged, the doctor slapped my rear end to induce breathing and handed me to the attending nurse. It was an appropriate introduction to the world. It offended me more than it hurt, so I chose to remain silent. "There's another one coming," he said. The doctor had learned the hard way to always check for a second baby and even a third. "It's a boy," the nurse holding me said to my mother. "He has a black eye." The scene was chaotic, a harbinger of the years to come. The doctor said, "The second one's coming fast, nurse. Prepare yourself. It's a girl." The nurse handed me the male baby, middle-named Cuthbert, and third in succession to the name of Stanton Wheelhouse, to my mother. The towel the nurse cradled me in was transferred with me, so the nurse raced to another part of the room to find a second one for my sister. By the time she returned to her spot by the doctor, my twin had emerged and been introduced to the world with an equivalent swat on the backside. The baby girl erupted with a volcanic cry of pain and anger unlike any the doctor and the attending nurse had ever heard. The doctor's eyes became large and round behind his glasses, and wrinkles surfaced on his forehead like ocean waves caused by an unforeseen storm. He handed the second-born to the nurse and looked into my mother's eyes, his expression now practiced and warm. He tilted his head slightly and said, "Mrs. Wheelhouse, congratulations. I must attend to the next delivery now, but I wish you and your family all the best." "Twins?" my mother responded in shock, but the doctor was already rushing out the door, seeking haven from the battle cry of the fresh girl. He hadn't even checked for the possibility of a third baby. The screaming of my sister in the nurse's arms crescendoed, and the two women looked at each other with worried faces, both trying to beat back their women's intuition. This noisy little lady, also with a black eye, was going to be trouble, and both of them knew it. When my father came to the hospital room after the delivery, he seemed to my mother to be disinterested in his unexpected daughter. In reality, he was in complete denial of her very existence. Plus, he was unhinged by the lungfuls of sound my sister constantly produced. My father, Stanton Wheelhouse, Jr., was by now used to being ensconced in the University of Mississippi's library, poring over the intimacies left behind by William Faulkner without so much as a whisper to interrupt his concentration. Now my father was rightly worried about all this chaos and how it would affect his peaceful home, where he also studied and wrote copiously. These considerations brought a panicked feeling, and it caused in him the fight or flight response. "Are you okay, Stanton?" asked Prudence, at the same time thinking he should be comforting her, not the other way around. "I don't know, honey. I've suddenly become nervous." "Is it because we have twins?" my mother asked, hoping for some reassurance. "I hadn't even got to that," my father said, his voice trailing off. "The noise. I can't think straight. And they've both got black eyes. I told you a month ago I felt wrestling in my belly. I guess I was right. I must get back to my studies, dear. Please forgive me. I love you and little Stanton and her." He kissed each of us on the forehead and was gone. Alone now, with twin babies in her arms, tears ran down my mother's face, but she had no third hand with which to wipe them away. The attending nurse came back to retrieve information for the birth certificates. "Oh, you poor dear," she said, and went to the cabinet beside the sink for a fresh hand towel. She hurried back and sat on the bed next to my mother and wiped the tears away. "Everything is just fine," she said in a soothing voice. "You've got two beautiful, healthy babies. It's always overwhelming, even for ladies who just have one. You're doubly blessed." Mother smiled meekly, trying to let herself be convinced that things would go well for her family. Getting back to her business, the nurse asked for the full names of the babies in the order of their arrival. "The boy is Stanton Cuthbert Wheelhouse III. And the girl? Will you help me name her? She wasn't expected." "Of course I will, sweetie. Have you any ideas? Surely you had something in mind if the baby was a girl." "Not really. My husband said he knew it would be a boy, so that's what we concentrated on." "Don't worry, dear. I'll help you. Is there a family name or someone you'd like to honor?" "Well, my grandmother was named Grace, and my mother's name was Hope. That's why I'm named Prudence. We're all virtues." "Well, now, that gives us something to work with." The nurse put the end of her pen in her mouth and thought very hard. "Chastity? That might be too hard to live up to. What if she rebelled against her name?" my mother said. "Oh, now that would not be good. Let's keep trying. After more thinking, the nurse said, "All the virtues I can remember wouldn't make a good name, like sobriety." Prudence smiled and said, "You've just given it to me. Temperance." "That's a wonderful name," said the nurse, "and not too much to live up to." Both women smiled at the accomplishment of naming my sister, who for the time had been quiet. Warily, the nurse said, "The middle name?" Prudence made up her mind quickly. "Temperance, Purity, Wheelhouse," she said. "Ooh," the nurse said, "doubling up on the virtues. She's going to be quite a girl." Truer words were never spoken. Chapter 2. The next few years passed neither slowly nor quickly, which is unusual if you think about it. My father completed his undergraduate degree in literature shortly before my 3rd birthday and was accepted into the graduate program. His academic advisor was so enamored by my father's classroom accomplishments that he went far beyond his prior efforts for any other student and assisted in obtaining a substantial grant for my father's postgraduate studies. The approval of said grant had much to do with my father's master's thesis, William Cuthbert Faulkner and the University of Mississippi, a dissertation on a symbiotic literary relationship. The university provost ate it up, envisioning a wing of the library or even a museum built around my father's efforts. Everyone involved was in acute denial of the fact that Mr. Faulkner dropped out of Ole Miss after only 3 semesters. It was like a family secret meant to be taken to the grave. My father chose not to walk the stage to accept his bachelor's degree in literature. He felt it was a minor accomplishment and didn't even notify the captain until weeks afterward via a low-key letter. That's surprising, since the captain was the most important person in my father's life. My father's father, the grandfather I never met, perished in a lumber mill accident in Maine during the Great Depression when my father was just a baby. So he was raised by his mother, the grandmother I never met. She died of tuberculosis shortly after my father joined the Merchant Marines, and there was much guilt associated with her death. The captain had lost his only son, and there was guilt with that too. That's why they became so close. I know even less about my mother's family history, other than that she was estranged from her parents at a relatively young age due to some traumatic and painful event. And for that reason, nothing was ever said about it. Apparently, my father rescued her, which probably explains her willingness to submit her own wishes in order to help make my father successful. During those undergraduate years after my birth, my mother and father grew apart. More accurately, my father isolated himself to dedicate as much time as possible to his studies, and their relationship was a casualty, collateral damage, to borrow a term from the military. His guilt of abandonment was assuaged by the knowledge that he provided for us. The money saved from his stint in the Merchant Marines had sustained the family through his first degree, and the grant money did the same through his continuing education. We did not live a life of extravagance, to be sure. My parents were frugal to the point of misery, due to being children of the Great Depression. Father was never unfaithful to my mother. His only temptation was the stacks of the university library, a literary mistress with enticing words to lure him away from his uneducated little wife, who could not muster the eloquence to compete with my father's love affair with the written word. As a result, my mother grew ever more silent. Her words at family mealtimes became unnecessary, especially since idle conversation was almost impossible due to the wall-shaking wail of temperance. There was a lot of that around the 50s. People did things out of obligation, without complaint. It didn't mean they didn't love each other, but the harmony and bliss of that decade was many times just a facade maintained to appear proper. And with that, I have set the family dynamic in the Wheelhouse household. Father ensconced himself in his study or the university library with his precious words. Mother toiled in the house, cleaning and preparing meals in silence, her only intellectual interactions with toddlers. Temperance screamed her bloody head off. I was mostly ignored or left alone, but took it all in with an objective eye, a conscientious objector to the behavior of my twin, making mental notes like a wartime journalist who has lost his pen. All of these things converged at obligatory meals, with my father racing away when he finished, leaving the dishes and diapers to my mother. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop there and end episode 1. We made it to the bottom of page 6, and I'll be continuing there next episode. Thanks for joining me.
The Paperback Rocker has signed off.